I always find it interesting when the media comes to me and says, Justin Trudeau has promised a utopia. Are you going to remove his utopia if you get elected? Well, let's see this utopia first.
I know you see us talking about this every week, that we're still months, over a year away from a next federal election. But the numbers keep pouring in, showing that the Liberals are in big, big trouble and a Conservative majority is on the horizon. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me are Lorrie Goldstein and Brian Lilley. I put that caveat, Brian, because I know our viewers are probably thinking, oh God, here we go again. We're so long away from an election, but you guys keep talking about the numbers. But the numbers matter. They're instructive and they help us see the temperature and the mood of the country, where it's going. And right now, it remains a 20-point, potentially 20-point lead for the Conservatives under Pierre Poilievre, and the Liberals a distant second.
It doesn't matter which polling company you're looking at. It's a 20-point lead now. And Laura Stone from the Globe and Mail, colleague at the Queen's Park Press Gallery, actually put this question to Justin Trudeau the other day. And can we roll this clip? I think it's worth showing, just part of her question and then Trudeau's response.
Polls have put you 20 points behind the Conservatives, and it doesn't seem to be getting better despite your recent communications push from your budget. The public appears to have an overwhelmingly negative view of you personally, and you seem to have lost control of the conversation on some of the key issues that Canadians care about. I think the public might be looking at you and your position right now and thinking, for the good of the Liberal Party, why is he staying on?
Thank you for your concern, Laura. But as you see, we're here investing in good jobs for today and for generations to come. The world is in a challenging place, absolutely. But that's why for 8 years this government has been putting forward investments and a frame that both fights climate change and creates good jobs and economic growth. A different government years ago wouldn't have made the choice to build an EV ecosystem here in Canada. Would have doubled down on the oil and gas industry and stayed away from anything that threatened the oil and gas industry. Well, we know that the pressure we're putting on the oil and gas industry to decarbonize and to invest in renewables goes hand in hand with our decision to invest massively in the electrification of our economies.
So, a very fair question, Adrienne, and his response was a smarmy, thank you for your concern, Laura, and then an attack on the oil and gas industry, which made no sense to me. Liberals are now saying the quiet part out loud. This guy has to go. He is harming the party. I don't go to a single event where Liberals are there. And yes, shocker to a lot of viewers, especially my haters, Liberals talk to me. And they're scratching their heads. Even ones who have been close to Trudeau say, I don't know what's happening. He's got to go. You know, and especially when you look at the polling numbers that Angus Reid did, breaking down by religious faith or identification. The only religious group the Conservatives aren't leading with are Muslims, and they're not going to the Liberals, they're going to the NDP. 41% of Muslim voters say they back the NDP compared to 31% for the Liberals, 15% Conservatives. But when you've got more than half of Catholics, once the backbone of the Liberal Party's base saying they're voting Conservative, that is telling you something. Where the plurality of Jews in Canada, 42%, say they are voting for the Conservatives versus 33% for the Liberals, that's telling you something. Sikhs, Hindus, other Christians, majorities in all of them voting Conservative. That has to be concerning for the Liberal brain trust. But apparently the guy with no brains is at the top and he's not leaving.
No, he's not leaving, Lorrie. And I think that there are, look, it's a laundry list of reasons why he should leave, but there is a stubbornness here with Trudeau. There is a thought in his mind that he is the only one that can possibly save Canada from the dregs of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. No one's buying that anymore. There's no mechanism as Canadians where we can, quote, impeach a prime minister as much as our writers say, our viewers say to us, hey, can't we impeach him? No, we don't have that mechanism here. Now, but what the Liberal Party can do is put forward their own internal process where they can have him step aside. But I don't know who's going to be brave enough to ever do that. So I'm curious, like with every demographic, every age group, and almost nearly every sort of those who identify with a certain religion, except for the group of Muslims who are supporting the NDP more, the Conservatives are leading in everything. You're a Liberal strategist, Lorrie, and you're thinking we got to do at least something to save some of the furniture.
Yeah, and so I mean, so what we're seeing now. And I think this is a thing of them disconnected. People are worried about the mortgage payment. They're worried about the cost of food. They're worried about livelihoods. They're worried about the future of their children economically. And the Liberals are talking about the Conservatives are white supremacists, or they associate with white supremacists. They refer to groups that most Canadians have no idea of who they are. And also, it's pretty hard to attack Pierre Poilievre as anti-women when he's leading amongst women voters. It's pretty hard to call him anti-Semitic when he's leading among Jewish voters. And so, to me, it's just that the Liberals have lost focus on what the Canadians care about. And even when they ostensibly say that they do care, for example, their recent budget, and what did they say? Housing and affordability. That's what we're going to focus on. And yeah, you look at any poll, housing and affordability, housing, cost of living, affordability, the economy, those are huge issues. But I think, and so we had that whole thing for like a month where, every Liberal everywhere was announcing new housing starts and blah, 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 blah. But then you look at the record of Liberal performance over the past, since 2015, 9 years. And so to me, when a government says, now we're going to focus on housing, because this is a crisis, and somebody ought to have done something. So now we're going to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
We've been in power since 2015. And look, all of these problems are not solely the fault of the Liberal government. But to me, they have two problems. People are tired of them. They think it's time
That's
for
right.
change. They don't like Trudeau anymore, which I know must be killing him, but they don't like him anymore. They've seen his show. It's time for him to go. And even when they try to go focus on issues, people go, yeah, you said that before, you didn't do it. So I'm not
sure. Brian, when there is that moment in the air of just time for change, it doesn't matter what's going on. If there's time for change, it is so insurmountable. But look, we all know this. No one can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory better than Conservatives can. I mean, it happens in successive elections. There's something different, though, I think, in just because of where the mindset of Canadian electorate is in terms of getting a new government. But the leadership under Pierre Poilievre has seemed to me, he's really tapped into the Canadian consciousness, and he's not the big scary figure that the Liberals are trying to make him out to be.
He's not, and he is staying focused on those issues that matter. The only thing the Liberals didn't tell us ahead of time about their budget was this big capital gains tax change, which is horrible economics, but they thought was going to be brilliant politics, and it could get everyone to stop talking about the carbon tax and talk about capital gains tax. Well, Pierre Poilievre was asked about it this week. Will you rescind it if you're elected? And he said, well, right now there's nothing to rescind. The Liberals are desperate to get Pierre Poilievre saying, I'm against this capital gains tax change that will hurt all kinds of people, not just the rich, as Trudeau says, but they're desperate to get him to talk about it. And he won't, because he wants to focus on housing. He wants to focus on affordability. And this is an issue to some people who probably rightly believe he will get rid of it, but he's just not even talking about it. He said, there isn't anything to rescind because the Liberals even took it out of their own budget legislation. So it's a bit of a bizarre scenario going on in terms of how the war is being waged. But a long time between now and an election, and you never count out your opponent. Never.
But Lorrie, last word to you on this. Amongst all of this discussion, we've barely even touched on the partner in their coalition government. That's, of course, the NDP. And we've talked about it before. The old adage is that in order for Conservatives to do well, the NDP needs to do well. None of that seems to matter in this election cycle. Those numbers are, the Conservatives are blowing them all out of the water as of where we stand right now. But certainly for the NDP, they've got to be thinking to themselves, this calculation we took by standing shoulder to shoulder and propping up this Liberal government, it's not working. Canadians don't like it. Last word to you, Lorrie.
Yeah, their political problem is that the Conservatives are now the party of protest. The NDP always portrayed itself as the party of protest, and they've lost a lot of that to the Conservatives. And in terms of the history of these accords, I covered Ontario politics for years, and their history is not good for the minority partner. There was an accord between the David Peterson Liberals and then the Bob Rae, irony, NDP in Ontario. To brought down the Conservative vote. And in the next election, 3 years later, Peterson got a huge majority and the NDP were reduced because whatever's good, in that case, people attributed to the Liberals, right? And so the NDP wasn't getting credit for these things they have done. So even on the things where the NDP can say justifiably, we did have a say, we did pressure them on issues like national daycare and pharmacare. I think in the end, the people who are in favor of those things ultimately credit the government that brings them in. And so to me, I think the real issue for the NDP is, if you're analyzing this, should we have just, when the 21 results came in, have simply said, no, to Mr. Trudeau, no, we're not going to give you a deal. We're going to look at issue by issue, right? You still control your fate in that way because you can support the government whenever you want. Like, the government doesn't automatically fall if the NDP had left or leaves the coalition. There has to be a confidence vote. So why would you constrain yourself politically the way they have when you could do the same thing by simply saying, no, we'll do it issue by issue, the way it used to work. Certainly in Ontario, those kinds of governments were very popular in Ontario. But when you're propping up a government that you're denouncing every day as corrupt and terrible, what do you think people are going to think?
That's great. Well, let us know what you think in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and go to the TorontoSun.com. You will find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.